Papercut Club on Oman FM.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Papercut Club, a show where we discover more about the world and ourselves through the magic of the written word. I'm your host, Fatma Makki, and today I'm delighted to be joined in the studio by a new friend who I wish was an old friend.
Someday soon.
Yes,
we just have
soon.
to wait.
It's a matter of time. Jess, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to Oman, actually.
Thank you. Thank you. This has been one of the most beautiful places I've gotten to be in my life. So thank you for having me in the studio,
Yay.
which I also think is beautiful. They're like mid-century modern vibes. And I'm so happy to be here too.
I'm going to quote you on that, mid-century modern vibes. So I met Jess a week ago, almost exactly. And I decided that it was imperative that we have this studio time together. And because there's just so many overlaps in our interests, and obviously the main one being books. But before we begin all of that, I want to get a little bit of a breakdown from you about your time here in Oman, like how much what you've seen, or just your general impressions. I think people would like to know.
Okay, so it's important to say, first of all, that I lived in Morocco for 6 months, and I've spent time in Lebanon and the Emirates, but I'd never been to Oman. But it's probably been more than 5 years since I was anywhere in this part of the world. So I have to say that when I walked out of the airplane and into the Omani airport, just the beauty of everything. So like the marble and then the old tile patterns etched into the glass and the wood and the architectural benches, and then the diffusers. So the whole air was just like beautiful and welcoming. I actually did tear up. I told Sora, just seeing my favorite patterns from my favorite parts of the world, but all around me and sort of reinvented and modern. I got teary-eyed. It felt so good to be back in a way, even though this is my first time in Oman, and then to, see my friend get picked up, and just drive through the city and see the beautiful white buildings.
Yeah.
And I'm staying in an apartment complex that my friend's mom helped construct or constructed. So, and my mother's an architect. So I'm in complete awe and disbelief of the beauty of the place where I'm staying, the streets. We drove yesterday, just drove around the city in the desert for most of the day. We've been to 2 or 3 beaches.
Amazing.
It's a beautiful place. This is a beautiful, beautiful place.
Oh, I'm so glad. So in the next few days, I think you're going to see a lot more, hopefully. And I'll get a recap from you on all of those places. But yeah, I'm sure with our mutual friend, you're going to see a lot of nature and a lot of good scenery. Like, I have no doubt you're in good hands. So what I wanted to talk, I don't know where to begin actually with our discussion, but the thing that amazed me, I think let's start here. Why don't we find out a little bit more about you, who you are as a person and what you do? Like, you're from Minneapolis.
So right now I live in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I'm also in the process of moving to Bocas del Toro, Panama.
That's amazing. So Minneapolis is how many hours away from Boca?
Oh my gosh. So I think I need to make smarter air flight decisions because the last time that I flew home, it was a solid 19 hours from door to door. And I realized on that flight home that I'm older than I used to be. So I got off that last plane. I was like, oh my God, everything hurts. Yeah. So from now on, I think it's going to be a nice, beautiful trip from Bocas del Toro to Panama City, maybe a night or 2 there, and then a 5-hour flight, easy, from Panama City to Minneapolis. Much more tolerable.
So actually, before we ever spoke, I know very little about Panama, actually. And I didn't even know that it had an archipelago of islands. I just thought it was one piece of land basically attached to Mexico City, basically. I don't know. That just shows my ignorance, I guess. And I know that it's like there's a lot of tax businesses there. I don't really know.
Well, see, now you're finding out too much about me. Yeah. So let's see. In December, I was in Colombia for a wedding. And I realized, for the sake of my health, I really actually cannot keep up with the cold in Minneapolis. My house is a little more big than I can manage. I have an old fixer-upper. The shoveling is a little bit more than I can manage. And then just facing the cold in the morning is making me too depressed. So I was in Colombia realizing it's warm, it's humid, I can breathe. I jump out of bed in the morning and I'm happy about the day. And I more or less decided I needed to make some changes so I could feel uplifted day to day, more like myself again. So I decided pretty much overnight I was going to move to an island.
Wow.
And I ended up deciding that island was Bocas del Toro.
Wow.
I knew I was really interested in Panama and excited because I really love really cosmopolitan in-between places. So I lived in Morocco. I spent 3 weeks in Beirut. I've been to Berlin 3 times. So these places in the world where 3 or more, so many cultures just all come together are definitely the places that excite me most and where I feel most at home. And so Panama is a pretty great manifestation of that for me.
I never would have known that ever, I don't think. That's amazing. So the island itself, is it more of a, is it as well like a cosmopolitan, very busy place, or is it more...
It's so gorgeous. So it's an archipelago of islands. So there's a whole slew of islands. It's pretty sparsely populated. One of the reasons that I picked it was, being in my real life and real job, a vice president of a business and in finance, I did a whole spreadsheet of all the different islands I might consider moving to. And it was the second least populated of everyone on there. So there's only 12,000 people on the whole archipelago.
Wow.
So it's gorgeous. I mean, it's turquoise oceans, palm tree covered islands, beaches, and there's monkeys. Like when I was in my beautiful resort hotel, just outside my window are 20 howler monkeys all the time.
That's amazing.
Or you can walk through the forest and for sure see 1, 2, 3 sloths all the time. Tropical birds.
Oh my gosh.
It's a when I was landing, knock on wood, but when I was landing in Panama City and again in Bocas, it looks as if you were like dying and going to heaven. Like, am I landing here or have I arrived?
God, this is amazing. This is amazing to me because I've only ever associated recently Panama with that weird Panama Papers scandal or whatever that was. That's the only thing I know about Panama, literally. So
beautiful islands.
Yes,
that's what I've learned.
I'm glad to know that there's more to it than that.
Well, I'm really excited for your first visit.
No,
then
definitely.
You'll get to see everything.
And also, if people are wondering why this has anything to do with my book show, I'll tell you why. What are you planning on doing there?
I want to open a bookstore. There's actually no bookstore right now on the archipelago at all.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. I have so many questions. I don't know where to begin.
It's a really exciting moment. Yeah, I'm enjoying myself.
Yeah, I'm so glad I caught you in this moment of your journey, because I wanna know about, well, we kind of know what led to your decision to leave the U.S. or to leave Minneapolis at least because of the cold, but what made you decide to want to open a bookstore? Because you don't run a bookstore in Minneapolis, do you?
No.
Yeah.
Let's see. What made me decide to want to open a bookstore? I mean, I've always been a reader. So since I think I learned late, but then from age 7 or 8 on, I read probably close to a book a day. I went everywhere in the world with a book. I would go to movie theaters with a book in my pocket, try to find somewhere that had a light close by so I could just read instead of be bored by the movie. We would watch movies with my family and I would be sitting there on my couch separate with a book. So that was my whole childhood. And then, so I was there. I really don't understand how it came to me, or I don't remember. I was like a bookstore. I don't want to open an Airbnb or a bed and breakfast. A bookstore.
Yeah.
I want there to be a place that people can come and peruse and then sit. Like when I was a kid, like going to Barnes & Noble as a kid was the best part of my week. It's like I could go in there, I could look at everything, I could sit in a corner with a book, and I felt like I could spend endless time just reading there.
Yeah.
And it was really magic.
I actually relate to that because when I was a kid, we used to have W.H. Smith. You know W.H. Smith?
I don't.
It's kind of, it used to be like Barnes & Noble in a way because it was this very prestigious chain of bookstores. Now it's kind of sort of transformed into another model. It's more like an airport bookstore. It's got loads of candy and magazines and whatever, and then a tiny shelf for bestsellers. But that's not what it used to look like. It used to be literally just shelves upon shelves of amazing books and this huge kids section and whatever. And I grew up in Paris, and my mom used to drop me off with a nanny to the bookstore, to the W.H. Smith that was near where she would do her errands, and just leave me there for hours. And I miss that. Like, I think a place that doesn't have, a city that doesn't have space like that is missing something so crucial. So I think it's so great that you're bringing that to Panama, to that particular island.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm really, really, really looking forward to it. I love languages. So right from the beginning, I had the idea, I'm going to shelve the books trilingually.
Wow.
So I wanted the same book, 3 copies in English, Spanish, and then there's a local indigenous community in Gobe.
Wow.
And I want a third set of 3 books in the indigenous language, which is right now a language that's spoken by some thousands of people. And I want to be able to translate both in and out and take oral histories and share stories. So it'll be, I just wanted to play.
So there's more to this bookstore than just selling books. It sounds to me like there's cultural preservation and a community space.
That's what I'm hoping. That's what I'm really excited about building. Yes.
Yeah. Wow, that's going to be amazing. And what about your book selection? Like, what are you planning on stocking? So we know that you're going to do 3 languages, or that's the plan at least. But when it comes to, for example, let's say you have like Isabel Allende, right? She's got her books in English and Spanish. Would you then try to commission translations into Gobe? Is that the language?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. That's what I want to do.
Amazing. Wow. So, yeah, tell me about your book selection.
So, I think it's going to be all my favorite books, which is to say it's going to be the absolute best of queer international fiction, and then whatever else I'm very interested in right then. So I also really like to read about time and time travel and bending time. So I imagine there'll be some of that. And I love, right now, I'm fascinated by Panama butterflies, birds, trees, like all these new things around me. So the very best of international fiction and whatever else delights me that day. And I plan to keep a really small curated collection. So I don't know what number I'll start with, but I want to actually keep that number as opposed to it being sort of floor to ceiling shelves and different alleyways. I want it to have a real best of small collection and then sort of a bookstore bar around it.
Yeah.
And somewhere that people can really stay.
Yeah. So you can get your books, head over to the bar and just chill with a book.
Exactly.
Yeah, that sounds so cool. Yeah, I have to say there's something that to be said for a highly curated shelf. Bookstores here in Oman, we don't really have that much in terms of English books that are stores that have English language books available. But when they do, it's more like, let's just try and either get anything and everything, or let's just get the top 10 bestsellers, fiction, nonfiction, And I think that's really missing out. Like, I think people don't realize what you get with a curated bookshop. Like, I think that concept doesn't exist here that much, or it maybe did before and it stopped. But why would you want to make it so specific? Do you feel like you would risk losing out on customers or losing out on a community?
To be honest with you, I think I'm driven entirely by my desire. So I just start with what do I want most? And then I run for it because it's possible to live that way and it's extremely fun. And so I think I started with a list of, I want to be surrounded by my favorite authors all the time. So I want all of my best friend and my boss in my business back in the U.S. Our business is Alex Pate. I love his books. We met via his books. He's become like a father to me via his books. So I want to be surrounded by all of his books, and I want them in English and Spanish.
Amazing.
And in Time and Barry too.
Yeah.
And then James Baldwin and Kweke Emezi and these literary titans that I've loved for both my whole life sometimes or my adult life. I love the idea of being able to stand in a magical rainforest, open air space, and twirl around in the center of all my favorite authors. And the best part is I actually think it's going to bring anyone who love incredible books, including queer books, from Bocas del Toro, from Panama. And I am really shooting for one of the top 10 most famous bookstores in the world. So I hope there's a tremendous amount of travel from people all over the world who are both queer and want to read queer fiction and who love books and want to read groundbreaking, genre-shifting fiction, because that's what it is to start to write stories that were suppressed for centuries. It actually changes the form of the novel, the form of literature, and is exciting and new. And I think that'll bring all readers, really.
And you could even end up having a writer's retreat there.
I'd love to do that, yeah.
That sounds like, I feel like that's my prediction for where it's going to go.
I think so much is possible. So every time someone says something to me, a writer's retreat, someone talked about a health retreat. A really close friend of mine got poisoned by a prescription med. She's been recovering for months. It'll take her months to recover. And she was talking to me about eventually Nature's So Healing, doing sort of like recuperating, surgery recovery, illness healing there. And every time someone says something to me, I remember it and I save it. And I hope that I'll get to do that either with them or with someone else who's excited.
Well, I mean, first of all, I'm sorry to hear about your friend because that happened to me. And so I can 100% relate. And to the fact that nature does heal, because I have such a very distinct graphic memory of being on the beach in next to Qantab, which is just down like maybe 20 minutes from here. And actually you probably have been near there, and just being on the beach and feeling overwhelmed by my senses because of just how invigorated I was after that bout of illness. So yes, nature can be healing. Nature is healing. And I can totally see this. Somehow I can see this in your...
I started this passion project in no small part because I think I had really not understood how much of my life my body really was. So I think there were ways that I was really neglecting my health through overwork, stress, feeling too responsible for too many things. And so I realized I really needed to slow down and kind of bring some joy back into life, bring some nature back into life. When I was there, I did a meditation at the ocean most days where I pretended the waves were taking away anything I wanted to let go of. Anxieties, a lot of anxieties, and then bringing in, things that I wanted. I hoped enough money to build this, the right people to believe in me and more. And it was so helpful to let the whole entire ocean with these 20-foot tall crashing waves to do that sort of self-work for me and with me. It's very helpful.
Wow. I mean, that's amazing. I would love to see this in real life. Is this near where your bookstore is going to be?
This is a 5-minute walk down the driveway from where my bookstore is going to be. Oh. And I know that your visit is happening, and I know that we're going to have so much fun.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned before, today is a very auspicious day that we're recording. It's 22/2/22. As everyone knows, it's a day where magic can happen. So let's put that kind of good energy out there. Because first of all, when you were talking about all of that, about your feelings of being overwhelmed with responsibility, like I am on that page right now.
Yeah, I fell apart. I had a complete nervous breakdown. I had a total nervous system. I fell apart. And I was like, wow. I am going to learn how to slow down. And I am.
And you did, yeah. And this is like, what an amazing outcome, though, to end up. I mean, I feel like I kind of secretly brought you on because I mean, it's no secret. I want to do the same thing. Like, I want to open like this amazing bookstore, like highly curated and all of that. So when you're talking to me, I'm just like, I'm projecting everything you're telling me onto Oman and thinking, imagine we had something like that here, like a bookstore / well, maybe not a bar, but a cafe dining area. And that was highly curated with all of my most favorite authors. I mean, it literally sounds like I'm describing heaven, so I can see what motivated you
to be too magical on this magical day. Like, I really think that's got to be a part of how and why we met.
Yes.
I know you're going to do that. I'm so glad you said it. If you hadn't mentioned it, I would have started teasing you about how, you should do that here. Yes. I can't wait to see that here. But like you already said, I think it's such a beautiful and important space to have places where people can come just because of curiosity and be and stay just for the sake of joy. I think it's healing in the same way that nature is. Yes, that absolutely needs to be here. And
it's something that I think people who are from the community and visiting the community can benefit from. Because I know, like, if you came here and would you want to go to a local bookstore and because of what I'm doing right now is one of the first things I asked Sarah is, like, for research, I actually want to go to as many bookstores as we run across. And so we went to Borders in the mall just to see. But also, when you were saying that, how lucky was I that I happened to be here with Sora, who happened to be your friend. So I happened to meet you because in a different world, I think you would have already built that bookstore. So I would have visited. So I would have met you. It had to happen. I'm loving this. Putting it out there. The more we say these things, the more they start to flesh themselves out. Yeah. And we bring them closer. Yeah. And we also bring in the help, I think, that we need to make it happen. So when I started talking about this, I started running into so many people like you, which took my book list from my favorites to, like you said, Isabel Allende. And I've been reading Elena Ferrante's name everywhere. I haven't read her. I'm so excited too. And this book list is stronger, twice as strong by every single person I talk with, which is so exciting. That's amazing. And that's amazing. That's part of it for me is I'm opening this bookstore as a nonprofit or a not-for-profit because I want to work together. Like, I want to work with everyone that I'm talking with. I'm sort of bored of this, like, no, this is mine. This is my idea. I have to keep it secret. I can't share. It's like, no, this is my idea. And after 2 years of pandemic, every single person in the world wants to talk about an island. And so I'm going to talk about it as much as possible with as many people as I can. And then we're both going to have better ideas. And it's getting more real faster. And it's a better idea for it. Yeah. So why a nonprofit? I know you said because you don't want it to necessarily just be your kind of thing. But a nonprofit in the sense that it won't make money or... Well, I really am fascinated by, and I always have been, not-for-profits, which is a distinction where, like, my credit union at home is a not-for-profit. So the organization still does profit, and then all of the profits are folded back into the health of the members in the organization. Wow. So I would like my not-for-profit bookstore to, and I believe it will, make a profit. However, I want to use that to open up this translation project. I'd love to open satellite bookstores, both on the neighboring islands, but also around the world. I have a close friend in Nigeria that I'd love to do a project with. I want something to bring me back to Morocco. And there's not a safe place for queer people, in my opinion, in almost everywhere in the world. Even in the United States, the discrimination, including homicide, is still present and still happening. So to build safe, loving, doors open places for us everywhere, the way I feel when I get to travel because I have so many great friends everywhere, I think it really matters that we can imagine safety, we can imagine growing up to be safe, we can imagine good things happening, as opposed to well, I can't do that, or I have to hide that, or I'm not the right sort of person. It's like, there are happy endings all the time today. So, yeah, it's not going to stop at Panama, clearly. No, I don't think so. But it's going to start there. It's going to start there. Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm finding it hard to ask questions because my mind is, like, wandering and going with where the bookstore is going. So, but it's okay. We're gonna dial back now. We're going to move on to our next topic, I think. What are you reading right now that has you excited and not excited? Like everything, basically. The best way to answer that is actually with the worst thing that's ever happened to me.
which is that I flew here by way of Paris. So I landed in Paris, and it was my first day in Paris on February 15th, which was the release date of Bitter by Akwaeke Emezi, who is my absolute favorite author in the world. And somehow I didn't do the math. I didn't make the connection. I didn't think. I thought I could wait 2 weeks to read my favorite author's newest book. But I woke up in the middle of the night on my first evening in Paris, and I was furious. I was so upset. I was like a mixture of like panicked, livid, stressed, angry, upset, distraught. I was like, how did I leave the country the day before my favorite author's got a 5th book out, and now I'm stuck in Paris? How is that a thing? Paris is a beautiful place. You can't get stuck in Paris. But all of a sudden...
But without the book.
I'm stuck in Paris. I'm stuck. I'm like, I don't want to be here. I don't have my favorite author's new book. This is awful. I'm not going to fly back to the States because I'm going to go see my friend in Oman.
Yeah.
If it had happened 3 days later, I would have been here. So I would have at least a friend like give me a hug and be like, Jess, you're going to survive 10 days without this book. But there, I'm just alone in a beautiful hotel room, stuck in Paris, hating everything, which was actually like the most incredible moment because one of the things I'm obsessed with about Emezi is their books completely changed the world.
Really?
And they're really inspired by the Toni Morrison quote. I stood at the border and I claimed it as center and let the world move over to where I was.
Wow.
So Akwaeke is writing from a like Black spirit perspective, like a spiritual Black perspective. And these are the best books. These are the best books, in my opinion, being released and written today. There are another 2 coming out this spring. Content warning,
2
everything.
amazing books?
Yep. It's a poetry collection in April. And then you made A Fool of Death with Your Beauty.
Yes.
Yeah, which is a romance, and I'm totally overjoyed.
Actually, if you ever feel bothered to go back to one of my previous episodes, the previous tangents, I mentioned this book because it's a romance, isn't it? Which is unusual for I mean it's new. It's
brand new.
Yeah.
I mean, Vivek Oji was a romance too.
Was it?
It's a novel and a drama and a tragedy and a romance. It's a book. I described it to a friend I lent it to recently, or I gave recently, but it's a book that will make you laugh out loud and cry out loud and have every other feeling also definitely out loud.
Wow. Okay. That sounds amazing. So were you able to get your hands on the book? Ultimately?
So what I did was I texted 2 friends in the States and I begged. I said, will you go to a bookstore? Will you get this book? Will you send me a voice or video message of you reading a page of this book each day while I'm gone? So I can just have a tiny little... And the first chapter, I think, is available online. Yes. But I was like, I can't. It's too divorced. Like, I can't touch it. It's on a screen. I was like, no, I need the book. I can't have the book. It's like, I will ask my best friend to spoon feed me the book that I can't live without for the 10 days that I'm traveling.
And did they do that?
Of course.
You have some good friends. I really don't know if I can think of a single person who would do that for me.
I feel I am really, really lucky. I'm incredibly wealthy and good friends.
Yes. What's your friend's name? I need to give them a shout out.
Aisha Nassim. Aisha Nassim is one of the most amazing friends in the world.
Aisha, you're an awesome friend. Seriously, that's so cool.
Yeah. They're saving my life.
So that one from what was the title actually? I forgot.
Bitter. It's the companion novel to Pet, Akwaeke's young adult novel.
Yeah. Wow, amazing. Okay, I didn't. First of all, I didn't know that Akwaeke Emezi had all of these books out. I somehow completely missed it. I knew about Vivek Oji and Freshwater, and that's it.
Okay, so we have Freshwater, Vivek Oji. Pet is the young adult novel. Dear Centurion was the most recent before the latest, Bitter, which is a memoir told in letters to friends.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, in more ways than one, straight up, like, they're a god. They are incredible. They can make absolute magic happen. They've put out, I think it's been 4 books in 4 years. And there's 3 coming out this spring. They're a god.
What a role.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, amazing. Okay, I've somehow completely overlooked it. And they are Nigerian, right?
Yes.
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 Just in case people are interested in looking them up, its surname is Emezi.
Yes.
Kwekemezi.
Nigerian, and I think very inspired and informed by Igbo sort of spirituality and ontology. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing, amazing. And what else? Anything else you're interested in? Anything else you're reading now?
So that's what I'm not reading, right? As I answered the opposite question.
Yes.
Let's see. I brought all the books I packed with me so that I could see. So I brought Dear Centurion. It's just full of ideas. So when I'm traveling, I want to be inspired by great ideas. It's not my first time reading that book. I brought Henry in June is one of Anais Nin's journals. It's from a time when she is married to Hugo, but also having a bit of a tete-a-tete with Henry Miller, the author, and his actress wife, June.
Oh, wow.
So it's a very exciting
That's
time
very
in her
Anais
life.
Nin sounding.
Yes. I just read Breath, The New Science of a Lost Art by James Nestor, which I really enjoy.
Oh, I've heard of this. He basically goes into detail about the science of breathing, right?
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I listened to an interview with him randomly on a like a wellness podcast, and yeah, I was blown away because people talk about it a lot of the time now in popular culture from a more of a spiritual perspective, and that's fine and you know, useful in its own way, but to actually know the science of it.
Yeah, it's been
It's a whole other
kind of
thing.
a missing piece of this sort of like healing journey post nervous system collapse. I was like, well, how do I learn to actually take care of my nervous system and body? And so there's things that one can do to tone and strengthen and improve the health of one's nervous system, just like one can eat well or eat very poorly. And so I've read quite a lot of books. How to Do the Work, Nicole LaPera was a great one. And Breath really helped me sort of fill in some pieces. Yeah.
That's so interesting because I'm trying to, so I have this other series that I'm planning on doing. It's kind of related to what you're talking about here called Books on My Mind, which is basically a books in mental health or wellness. And this is actually a really good one to talk about. So I'm going to add it to my list of books on my mind. But the one that I want to do first or next is, have you heard of this book called The Body Keeps the Score?
It's really funny. So I've got a list of books that I would put in that books on my mind category.
Yeah.
And that is on it for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's such a great book I haven't read the whole thing because it's very academic, and I want to do the 2 episodes on it actually because I feel like it's worth it. And really get someone who's like an expert, like either a doctor or some form of trauma-informed expert.
So
you know?
I have a hypothesis, and I feel like if I share this, a doctor is going to like sweep in the room and like hit me over the head. And I have a working hypothesis. The Body Keeps the Score is an excellent book on developmental trauma and trauma. I have a hypothesis that a lot of what we understand as mental illness, so depression, anxiety, PTSD, borderline personality disorder, and a lot of what we understand as inflammatory conditions, asthma, allergies, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, muscular sclerosis, I have a suspicion they are symptoms of trauma or PTSD.
Whoa.
And
That's a bold statement.
I know. I don't think I'm going to have time to write that book in the next 10 years. So I'm putting it out here, and we'll see what happens. But I think a lot of these things that we think that we must permanently live with and manage can really be soothed by thinking about how to improve our breathing, our nervous system health. Trauma is an injury. Injuries can heal.
True. Yeah. And I think people always assume as well that trauma is something like a huge traumatic incident, but fail to maybe, because that's the only thing I really know about trauma, which is that it doesn't have to be this big, scary, like, you know what I mean? Event
There's
with a capital
lot.
E.
Yeah. So trauma can be a singular car crash. but trauma could also be years in war. Trauma could also be years living as a civilian in a war-torn place. Trauma could also be, tragically, not always, but being Black in America when police officers are indiscriminately murdering Black people over the last both decades and ever since the founding of the police in America. And where there are horrific achievement gaps in schools and families are wholesale not being educated because of racism in education. That's a trauma, being left out of the story and being left out of the story of day-to-day life or hope and positive outcomes. It's a tiny, constant trauma.
And this is something you know intimately because of your work in the U.S., isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Which is...
So I'm the vice president with a business called Innocent Classroom, and we work to end racism in American schools, which is tragically a pervasive problem. Every American school, I'm sure there's an exception, I hope there's an exception, has a large gap between the achievement and performance of its white students and its students of color, which means at this point, as demographics shift, in America, we are wholesale not educating half of the kids in every class. And the consequence of that is all over the news every day.
And the trauma that comes from that can be
to be
lifelong.
A child and to not be understood as creative, curious, brilliant, delightful, and lovable, it's a horrible, horrible thing that we're doing to children in schools right now.
And that kind of trauma is being examined in literature, I feel, a lot lately. Actually, this is very funny that you're mentioning this because it's such a coincidence that you're mentioning this because I'm reading a book right now. So this is what I'm interested in, what I'm reading right now. And it's a book by a Kuwaiti author called Layla Al-Ammar. And she wrote a book called Silence is a Sense. She has a PhD in literature and trauma. So she studied trauma in literature, and I'm guessing from the title. I actually don't know what her thesis is. And her book, Silence is a Sense, follows the journey of a young Syrian asylum seeker in the UK who, as a result of the trauma that she experienced, is not able to speak. So she doesn't have she's like completely nonverbal. And it just follows her sort of existing in the UK, and it's so clever the way they did it because she doesn't speak, but she writes. So she's a student and she writes articles anonymously for a local paper. That's the framework of the story of the book. And so you get a real sense of what's on her mind. And, you see someone completely silent and like non-responsive on the outside. You would never know there's all that stuff going on in the back. So that's going to be something that I think is going to be coming up a lot more in literature.
I'm certain of it. This is, I think, what I'm really meaning when I talk about how Amezi changed the world. I guess a more accurate statement or a similarly accurate statement, because that one is true, is that today's writers of color, I'm not for a shortage of books to put in my queer international fiction bookstore. There are going to be too many. And so you said Layla?
Yeah, Layla, yeah.
And the last name?
Al-Ammar.
So Layla Al-Ammar, Akwaeke Emezi, Alex Pate, Toni Morrison, Sam Delaney. We have had writers of color sort of building a new canon for the last 50 years for sure, and over the last hundreds of years. And I think it has actually changed everything. We always have been, and still are, actually the global majority. This is actually the dominant narrative happening now. So today we already live in a world where people of color creating worldwide is the global majority of creation. So what's going to happen? So these things, this problem of racism in American schools is going to go under. It's going to go down. It's going to die and go out of fashion. That's what we need to make happen.
Yeah.
And we are.
Yes.
The world has changed.
Yes.
The world is changing, but I also think it actually has changed. I think we're in a moment of being able to recognize that we actually can move and we can expect good things for ourselves and we can find our stories in books and we can find places to put the stories that we're writing now.
And actually, again, speaking of all of that, another book that I've been reading, which is blowing my mind, and I feel like is more of what I want to see in the world as well, is the one I mentioned to you a couple of days ago, which is Trick Mirror by Gia Tolentino. I don't want to talk about it too much because it's our book club book of the month
Coming up next.
I want to give people something to look forward to, you know, but it's blowing my mind because it's, you know, you read like this book will not relate or hit home with other people as much as it's hitting home with me, because I think me and Gia are like probably similar in age. She's writing from a very personal standpoint, and also talking about stuff that, funnily enough, she's in the United States and she's writing about stuff that I can just so deeply and intimately relate to, that I feel a bit unnerved, actually, that how similar our lives are, or at least our interior lives. You know what I mean? Because, I mean, it should... A lot of times when I recommend books like this and I'm like, this is amazing, people are like, why would I read this collection of personal essays from this American person who probably has nothing like the life that I lived? But actually, if you read the book, and you did, actually.
I did. I don't remember it much right now, but what I'm grasped by in what you're saying is, again, it's the world has changed. Why do you have the same interior life here, Fatma in Oman,
Yes.
as Gia Tolentino in the United States? But Fatma, why are we sitting across a table from one another? So Jess, Annabelle moving from Minneapolis to Bocas del Toro, Panama. Fatma, like, why did we hit it off right away? Effortlessly. I recently met and have been talking with nonstop a new, and I want to say best friend, because we're that level, young man, Nemeka in Nigeria. And something in the world has changed about how far away we are, how fast we can share ideas, and how much of what's inside of us and what we're thinking is the same and instantly available. So you and I, before we ever met, right now and after, we're always going to have the same feelings. And we love books. We have so much in common.
Yes.
And in today's world, it was effortless for us to meet. And this is the third time we've hung out in my week that we're in Oman.
Yes.
How easy was that?
I know.
So something changed.
Yes.
We can almost fold the world together.
And you know, the funny thing is, the last time someone shared that exact sentiment with me, this is crazy, was someone from Minneapolis.
Yeah.
So
everything is falling together.
I have to shout out Rachel from Minneapolis. Her Instagram is stuck on the tip of my tongue. That's the name of her Instagram. And I need to, because she's probably the first person who really got me into the Bookstagram world, like, properly. I don't know how I came across her. It was just luck, I guess. And we just started exchanging. I would see her book recommend. It's kind of like what you were describing about Nemeka. We're just vibing with each other's book recommendations. And then she sent something like, this is so wild how, you know, you're over there in the Middle East and I'm over here in Minneapolis, and, you know, something like that. And that was years ago now. But yeah, it's crazy. And now I feel like I need to go to Minneapolis.
Maybe.
It's in my future.
To see Rachel.
Like, everyone's going to be like, oh, you're going to the US? Are you going to go to New York or LA? I'll be like, no, I'll go to Minneapolis.
There's a really great coffee shop called the Get Down Coffee Shop in North Minneapolis, where I live. It's brand new. Best music, best coffee, is across the street from an amazing grocery store, right next to a beautiful, very like modern design library, Weber Park. It's great. That's a must-see.
Also, another must-see is Louise Erdrich's bookstore.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yes, I've got that on my list as well. See, I know way too much about Minneapolis.
So I might be there September, October. If you go then, I definitely want to hang out. But no matter what, I want to know when you're there, because maybe I'll be destined to be there the same time.
Maybe I could do like a Papercut Club on location.
I really like this. Absolutely, yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so what... do you have any other books that you wanted to shout out, or was there...
Well, the last book, I just brought all the books that I packed on vacation. I was like, well, we're talking about books. These are my books. So the last book that I brought with is Yo no soy tu perfecta hija mexicana, because I need to take my Spanish from like mysteriously good for someone who's never taken a Spanish class to fluent over the next year in order to fulfill all these
I can actually
dreams.
read that title. It
Yes.
says, I am not your perfect Mexican girl.
I'm not your perfect Mexican daughter.
Daughter. Okay. Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think it looks like a kind of from the cover a YA novel, kind of.
So
Or
what
just
I
a
know
regular-
so far, and I'm making my way through extremely slowly as someone who decided that I was taking my Spanish from good to fluent as soon as possible. I think what has happened so far is her sister has passed away. And then she's going to go about finding sort of her place in the world and the family. And as a teenager in the wake of this, loss.
Tragedy. Yeah. Amazing. I like this approach to, okay, so I also tried to do the exact same thing, but with less success. I tried to learn Spanish. I took Spanish at university, so I spoke a little bit. And then I was like, this is not enough. I need to learn more. So I was in Spain, and I went into a bookstore and I bought, I think it was Paula, the book by Isabel Allende about her daughter who passed away. And I bought that book in Spanish, and I tried to read it, and I was like, it was a very half-hearted attempt to learn a language fluently, which you cannot do half-heartedly. Like, you just can't do it.
I think the purchase of this book and Violetta by Isabel Allende marked the my personal commitment and turning point from I'm going to learn, and I have been learning a lot, to I'm actually going to make an hour every day or more to start writing, memorizing, learning, being serious. When I move, I will very certainly look for a tutor or class, but it's my fourth language that I'm learning.
Wow.
So I'm really feeling and hoping that there's a way things are starting to come easier, just because now I can think about cognates in 3 other languages. So I'm really trying to like both study Spanish and learn, but also see how much Spanish I can catch by osmosis.
I'm sure you will if you live in Panama.
Yes.
And you'll probably be traveling around Southern America.
Yes.
Or South America. What am I saying? Southern America.
Both, yeah.
And you'll pick it up for sure. I actually had friends who lived, one in Argentina and they're Omani. So one Omani person living in Argentina, which probably like is the only one in the whole world.
I want to meet your Omani friend living in Argentina.
She's not there anymore, but she spent a lot of time there. And then another one in, I don't want to say where, I can't remember, somewhere in South America. Why do I keep saying that? And they learned the Spanish dialect of that country. So she speaks like a sort of Argentinian Spanish, and then the other one speaks a Mexican Spanish. So it's definitely doable.
My first 2 or 3 days here, maybe still, I kept pronouncing anything Arabic, but as if it was Spanish. Like all of my R's were super rolled, but like a little too much, like a little too more Spanish, less Arabic. And I was like, this is really interesting how it's all twisted
that's
up
awesome.
in there.
No one would have picked up on that. I don't think they would have been happy that you even knew the word in the first place. That's awesome. No, and actually the Spanish accent is not that far. Like the way in which sounds are pronounced is not that different from Arabic. Like the ra sound, the R you said, as you said.
Yeah.
I know it's more rolled but yeah, there's a lot of similarities. So
Yeah. Everyone is a cousin if you go back far enough. You know, Spanish, Arabic, everything. It's 2/22/2022. It's a magical day.
It
a
is.
Tuesday. It's a day when things are going to come together. It's a day of twins.
It is. It's all coming together. It is coming together for you and your bookstore. I can see it already, and I can't wait to follow the progress. And I want people here to follow it as well. So can we share where we can do that?
Thank you. Yes,
Yeah.
thank you so much. So I snagged the Instagram name. It is La Libreria, and I am a little bit waiting to start it really rolling until, let's see, I'm back down there probably May. And so over the year ahead, we'll officially open in 2023. There will be the first photos of the property, first photos of the building going up.
Yeah.
First stories of I don't actually know how to get books into a bookstore. I have to meet with I have meetings set up back in Minneapolis. I'm meeting with the book buyers so that I can learn this. But yeah, I'll share all of that. The journey from here to there.
Okay, before we wrap up, I just want to say how much I really love the way you are diving into this feet first, because this is so the opposite of something I would ever think of doing. Because for me, maybe this is my legal background, I need to know and plan against every risk and unknown under the sun. And it's such a debilitating way to, it's not actually a way to move, it's a way to stand still. But what you're doing is the exact opposite. It's like, I have the goal and I'm going to work through to it.
I have made an absolute decision to both make decisions out of desire instead of fear. And every single time that I have like panic of like failure, this could go wrong, or oh, I shouldn't have said that day, to stop and to make myself imagine what if the best case scenario happened. And I am actively practicing that. And some days all I do is sit still in a panic of like, oh my God, am I going to like make every single mistake and like ruin my whole life and leave the country and blah, blah, blah. And then stop over and over and over and over 20 times. But I'm getting a lot better at stopping myself and saying, okay, what if the best case scenario happened instead of what I'm afraid of?
Yeah, I'm sure it will. I'm sure it'll be the best case. I'll get my mom to pray for you. My mom's prayers are like gold dust, you know?
I really, truly appreciate that.
Yes.
I really do. I think actually there are, like, moms are backing this thing all over the world, which I'm so grateful for. My mom is going to help me build the bookstore.
Yeah, she's
Your
an
mom's
architect.
prayers are going to make this all come true.
Yes.
Yes. This is a mom-backed project, thank God. So then we know it's going to work well.
That can be your... Just thank you so much for being here. This was obviously a pleasure.
Thank you
And-
so much. It feels so special to get to be
Yes.
here. I so appreciate it.
And I can't wait to see where your project goes.
Thank you. Thanks. This is amazing. Thank you so much.
The Papercut Club is a member of the Oman FM podcast collective. You can find all of Oman FM's latest shows and updates on Instagram at omanfm.om. This episode was hosted by me, Fatma Makki, and edited and mixed by Abdullah Al-Mawali. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at thepapercut.club or visit our website at www.thepapercut.club. Thank you for listening and happy reading.
Papercut Club on Oman FM.